Hi everyone, we'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. If you'd like to participate in our iClicker questions today, it is totally optional, but it makes it a lot of fun. We have put the course information in the chat box here of GoToWebinar, so you can click on the link and sign in with your email and password or create a new account. And you can also participate with your mobile device using the iClicker student app. Just look for Macmillan Learning as the institution and Back to Campus with iClicker as the course. Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar, Back to Campus with iClicker. Just a few quick announcements before we start the presentation. Once again, if you're just joining us now, we have put our iClicker course information in the chat panel of GoToWebinar. It is completely optional to participate, but it is a lot of fun, so we really do encourage you to join us. Even if you've never used iClicker before, it should only take 30 seconds or less to create a new iClicker account. You can follow along with our instructions in the chat panel as I go through the rest of these housekeeping announcements. If you already have an instructor account with iClicker, you can use your instructor email and password to log in with the link in the chat panel. You can also participate with your mobile device using the iClicker student app. Just look for Macmillan Learning as the institution and Back to Campus with iClicker as the course. We have also muted everyone to keep out background noise, but we do want to hear from you. If you'd like to ask a question or give us any feedback, just feel free to type it into the questions panel on your screen. We'll be monitoring the questions as they come in, but we'll also be saving some for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your question during this webinar, we'll be sure to follow up with you by email. And finally, we are recording this webinar and we'll email you a link to the recording and the slide deck that we've used within the next few days. That's it for housekeeping. So with that, my name is Lindsay Thomas and I am the Training and Documentation Manager at iClicker. I am very excited to introduce today's presenter, Natalie Dougal, who is our iClicker training specialist and faculty advocate, and also a community college instructor. Natalie is going to kick it off now, so over to you, Natalie.
Okay, but only if I unmute myself, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm assuming if you're laughing, you can hear me. Okay, hi everybody and welcome. It's really nice to be back with everyone. We didn't meet up last month, so it feels like it's been a long time. And a lot of you are getting ready to go back into your classrooms with iClicker. So we're going to do a quick welcome back to iClicker, a quick refresh. Maybe you didn't use it over the fall and you're getting back into it now. Maybe you are making a transition to teaching online and you just want to make sure that you have the basics of using iClicker with, say, Zoom or Meet. That's great. You're going to get a quick refresh today so you feel really confident about that. Then we're going to talk about the new features that we have for you and your students. We've rolled out a lot of new features, and we've been able to do that without having a lot of software updates because so many things are now handled at iClicker.com. And then we have had one software update that brings you some exciting new features that we will talk about then. And we'll talk a little bit about some basics of getting ready for a new term, just some housekeeping things you'll want to keep in mind to keep your iClicker data nice and tidy. And I'll just quickly touch on some iClicker best practices and activity ideas that you can run with your students really quickly. Um, uh, just to talk about how a lot of these new features work together. And then lastly, we have our question and answer section. Question and answer is always our favorite part of our time together. So make sure that you throw any questions that you might have into the chat and we can address them at the end of our time together. And then you don't have to think about it. But it's always our favorite time and we get a lot of ideas for webinars from it. So before we get started, I wanted to know how everyone is sort of approaching this term. So how are you connecting with your students this term? So I've already got my iClicker desktop software going. I have my little toolbar up here. I clicked on polling and now I'm just going to select my question type. I don't want to limit anyone to just one response. So I'm going to ask this as a multiple answer question. And when I hit that play button, I'm first going to be asked, since this is the first question of my polling session, which window I want to send to my students. So I'm going to select that window. And that is one of our features that you'll notice when you're using the software this semester, especially if you're using Windows. That just gives you extra assurance that you're sending the right screen to your students. So now simply select as many correct responses here to show how you're teaching. So some of you might be in the classroom. Some of you are going to be using your class's LMS as a tool. Some of you are going to be using Zoom, Teams, those sorts of things. Some of you may be using pre-recorded video, and some of you might be so lucky as to meet with students in your office. Pick as many responses as fit your situation. And I'm going to let this one go until the 1 minute just because we have people joining our session. Don't worry if you haven't joined the session yet. I'm going to ask more polling questions. Okay, let's see what people are up to. All right, looks like we have people teaching in all different ways this term. Lots of people get to be in the classroom, yay. A lot of instructors are leaning heavily on their classroom's learning management system as well. Many of you are going to be using Zoom or Teams. Right now, I'm using GoToWebinar, and when I use iClicker with my video conferencing software, there's really nothing I have to do differently. The iClicker software knows how to work with the video conferencing software, and it's just as seamless as when I use a computer at a podium in a real life classroom. Some of you are using pre-recorded video, and something that you'll really want to explore is the possibility of using iClicker assignments to replicate the polling experience for those pre-recorded videos. And then lastly, some of you have students coming into your office to actually meet with you. This is really great, and iClicker can be a really wonderful tool for you because when that student shows up in your office, you can easily have information about, say, their attendance, how often are they coming to class, but also how engaged they are with your class events. And that's stuff you can pull up while your student is just sitting there in your classroom with you. All right, so I'm going to go and hide my results so I have a little more room on my screen. So if you're new to iClicker or you're just getting back to it, the first thing that you want to do is log into iClicker.com as an instructor and create your course. Most everything that you do with iClicker, you can handle at iClicker.com. The only time you need that desktop software is when you're on the computer that you use for asking students polling questions. The second thing that you need to do is make sure that you've downloaded the latest version of iClicker Cloud. When you fire up iClicker 5.2, which is what you should have if you taught last semester, you should get a prompt that will say, hey, do you want to download to the newest version? Downloading the newest version is going to be really helpful for you because you're going to get to use one of our newest features, which is confidence rating. And I'm going to show you that in our time together today. So make sure you download that latest version of iClicker Cloud so you have all the tools at your disposal. And then lastly, all you need to do is add questions to the presentation tools that you're already using. So in this example here, the tools that I am using today are GoToWebinar for my video conferencing. Then I'm using Google Slides for what you're actually being able to see. And then I'm using iClicker for asking polling questions and making this interactive. So I just have 3 tools that I have to manage, which is pretty doable for me. So I want to know what you all are doing this semester. So I'm going to change this to short answer, and I want to know what tools you are using alongside iClicker. So I just hit that play button. I get that preview of what my students see, and then I can see how many responses that I'm getting in. All right, I had about 9 responses last time, so I'm sort of looking for that same number. Okay. Oh, I've got 10. I've picked up someone new, 11. Since we have people that are joining our session, that number is going to change a little bit. I'm going to let this one go until the 1-minute mark too. Okay, got a few more seconds to get your response in, and I'm going to go ahead and stop it. All right, let's go ahead and look at those results. All right, I can look at my results in a list, but something that's really nice to do, and I'm going to go through and make sure that I mark all these correct, is I can also do a word cloud. Oh, cool. So you can see exactly what is sort of coming to the forefront. A lot of people are using Zoom in their classes. And iClicker works really well with Zoom. Again, the softwares know how to work together to capture things correctly. It's not something that you're going to have to manage. But something else that's really nice about using iClicker with Zoom is you can take those kinds of questions that maybe students might be throwing into the chat, and you can now collect them with iClicker and have them directed towards you. So it can give your students another way to talk to you that's more direct. I can see that a lot of people are using Achieve as well, which is a classroom management solution that we have here at Macmillan with iClicker included. And I can also see people are using Slides, Google, Canvas. I'm looking at things like VoiceThreader and Studio and other things that I haven't seen before. So this is really great to see all these different results for people using all these different tools together. And again, iClicker can work with anything because it's just capturing your screen like a screenshot. So let's talk about some of the new features that we have coming to iClicker and that have come to iClicker and released recently. First off, we have simplified onboarding with iClicker Quick Join. Quick Join, if you joined us for our last back to school presentation, Quick Join was in public beta then, which meant it was being tested by all of our users who wanted to. Now it is out of beta, and it is a full feature that you can use with your students. It's something that we've used today to onboard people into this iClicker session. So if you'd like to try it, you can still click on that Quick Join link that's in the chat, and you can see how quickly you can get into my class by using that Quick Join link. It's a really great solution too if you have, say, a single sign-on at your school. It makes sure that students direct to the right place, and it makes sure that your class gets added to their account. So it's really elegant, lovely. It's a great tool. I encourage you to use it. Another new feature that we have is the ability to control enrollment by having unlisted courses. So you may have a course that you really want to tightly control the enrollment of, and you want to make sure that nobody's able to see your screenshots or add your class without you knowing. This is a great way to do exactly that. It's also a great way to have a test course that you can go in and try different iClicker features without having students find that course and add it to their iClicker accounts. So that's a nice new feature that you'll find in the settings for iClicker. You can also try our new confidence rating feature, which is in public beta, which means it's being tested. And I'm going to show you how the confidence rating works on our next iClicker question at the end of this slide. You can also select which screen to image capture and share. This was something that was previously available for Microsoft for Macs, and now it's available for Windows as well. We also now have the feature to replace question images after class. How exciting. So if you find a typo in one of your questions that you sent to your students, you don't have to live with that typo anymore. You can go to iClicker.com and quietly replace the slide, and your students will be able to study that slide with study tools and not suddenly see, oh, there's an error on this slide. This also works great if, say, you take a shot of your desktop and you meant to take a picture of something else, or let's say that you have been concealing some of your slide images because you have multiple sections and you're worried about students seeing things. You can go ahead and replace those images. Replacing images doesn't just work for polling, it also works for iClicker assignments. So if you've been using iClicker assignments, you've built a big assignment and you just want to change the image on one of your questions, you're able to do that now. We've also officially retired two things. First is we have retired EGS, which was a grade sync option. We have sent lots of messages about the retirement of this feature, and we've worked really, really hard to move everyone away from EGS, and we've gotten pretty much everyone. But you know, you may notice that this option has gone away in your setups. Now, most of those who are using EGS have upgraded to roster and grade sync. You might be sitting here going, I don't know what grade sync option I have. Another enhancement that we've done to the iClicker website is the walkthrough for setting up your grade sync is better than ever, so that when you go to the grade sync, you're going to see what options are available for your campus. And if for some reason you're having issues with that, that's something that we can always help you with, but it's something that we've really streamlined. So you can go and explore that in the grade sync tab of the settings. We've also retired the desktop launcher from the instructor website. So it used to be that you could log in at iClicker.com, start your class there, and then start the desktop software from there. It just wasn't something a lot of people were using, so we retired it. We just didn't want to have anyone wondered where it went, or if things were just disappearing willy-nilly. No, we know where it went. Okay, so let's see this new confidence rating in action. So for this question, you're going to put a point on the scale to indicate how much you agree or disagree with the following statement. So this is a target question, and the statement that you're going to agree or disagree with is the pandemic will be over this year. So you can agree or you can disagree. And here in my little kebab menu, I'm going to click and I'm going to turn on confidence rating. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and ask my question. So on my end, everything looks exactly the same. For students, what they see is the area to respond to the question, which is to touch on the screen wherever they feel they agree with the statement and then hit send. And then below that, there's a new field that asks them to rate how confident they are about their response. You can see how quickly my responses are coming in, which means my audience is not having a hard time with this new feature. Okay, got about 12 people. I'm going to let this go till the 45. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. Okay. Now I'm going to click on my results. Okay, and I can see people are all over the place. When I have a targeted question, it's really simple to grade it. I just have to go and draw a square around where I feel the correct responses are. My mouse is being funky today. There we go. Then I hit save, and every response that's within the box, and I don't feel that anybody is wrong. It's interesting to see nobody came over here. Where everybody kind of spread out. And then I can see only 33% of the people who responded feel really confident about their response. So this is interesting information to me. This is like, okay, people are pessimistic, but they're not confident about their pessimism. And I can do something with that. I want to make sure to turn my confidence rating off at the end of each question. I don't want to overwhelm my audience by asking too many confidence questions because then I'm making every question a two-part question. Um, so I'm just going to do that before I move on to my next. All right. So now let's talk about some housekeeping things that you want to do as you're getting ready for a new term. First thing that you want to do is archive your old courses. Um, I'm kind of bad about this, and I just went and I did it, and I was so glad I did it because visually it just makes it so much easier for me to pick out my active courses from my list of courses. But the other thing that it does is it makes the class so that your students can't find it and add it later. So that's something that you'll want to do before you set up your new courses. Next, take a moment to update your desktop software on whatever computer you're using to run your polling sessions. This will make it so that you can use that new confidence rating, which I'm really enjoying a lot. The next thing you'll want to do is just review your grade sync options. Make sure you know what you're working with. And then lastly, if you want to, meet up with us for a training. So if you came here and you were really hoping to kind of get a more nuts and bolts, how does iClicker work sort of a discussion, you might be feeling a little disappointed. Just go to iClicker, click on demos and trainings, and you can sign up for a time where you can meet with me, Lindsay, or our colleague Elena, to go over the software and get you set up for your new semester. We also want to help you help your students. So something that you might be dealing with is you have students who are trying to handle adding their iClicker class, and they're also trying to handle clicking on the Zoom link, and they're trying to figure out the LMS, and maybe they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. We really want to make it easy for you to support your students. So we have a ton of iClicker support. Just go to iClicker.com, click on support. There are a ton of articles, and your students really do love not talking to a human being and being able to use a video or an article to support them. Just giving them that iClicker support link can be really helpful. But we also have support like our chatbot Iggy. We have live support chat agents. We also have the ability to talk to an agent on the phone or over email to solve issues with their accounts. So, if your student's having trouble with their Android, that's not really something that you're going to want to solve. Send them our way. So I really want to know from this group what you all would like our webinars to focus on in the future. In the past, we've had webinars about growth mindsets, how to write efficient questions. And in the future, we're planning to have a webinar about habit building and how iClicker can help with that, and how we can use iClicker to build communities in classrooms. So I want to know what are some other topics that our webinars could focus on, and I'm using our anonymous feature to gather this information, so that maybe you are an internal person at Macmillan and you'd like to see a webinar and you don't want me to know that it was you who suggested it. So go ahead and suggest those webinars. Oh, the group is quiet now. I got one person to respond. So, something that you do want to do when you ask anonymous questions, and especially when you ask anonymous short answer questions, is you want to be able to preview responses somehow privately. You don't want to display all of those responses to the class. And so, something that I've been using as a tool throughout our webinar is the iClicker instructor app. So I've been able to actually watch all of the responses come in real time on my phone. And it makes it so I don't have to manage another window. You'll notice I've clicked on my toolbar very little. Um, and I'm also able to turn my polls on and off from my phone if I wanted to. So it just gives us a lot of um, different options. So I'm going to let this go until the 1:45. Okay. And I saw a lot of really cool responses. Retrieval practice, generative strategies, democratizing the classroom, using iClicker with Achieve, how to do group work with iClicker. That would be a lot of fun. A webinar with best questions from a wide array of classes and why they are good for learning. Very interesting stuff. Now you'll notice I can't click on any of these responses and mark them as correct because it's anonymous. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to turn that mode off before I go to my next screen, just so I don't get confused. So before we get to our Q&A, I want to just talk about some quick best practices. I've shown you a lot of different iClicker activities that you can run, but let's talk about how we put them into practice when we're in the iClicker classroom. I really want to encourage you to set iClicker attendance to auto run at the start of your term. This is especially important if you're having virtual classes and you're having students show up for a Zoom. It's really unsatisfying to go to class sometimes, and just that act of seeing their attendance record can be the positive reinforcement that students need to keep on attending those Zoom classes. It gives them a good record of when they've been in class. They get a nice little calendar that shows them when they're coming to class, and it's also good information for you. Again, when that student shows up in your office, it's really nice to know whether or not they've been attending those Zoom lectures that you've been holding. You also might want to try iClicker Focus to minimize digital distractions, especially if you're back in the classroom for the first time in a long time. You might find that students are having a hard time monitoring themselves with their phones, or maybe you're just worried that your students are having a hard time about that. With iClicker Focus, students are encouraged to stay in the iClicker app throughout class, and they are given a report at the end of class that shows them how many times they left the iClicker app. They're not limited from doing anything with their phone, but they are kind of just given um, some tools for um, self-evaluation. And then you as the instructor, you're also given a report at the end of class that shows how often your students were leaving the iClicker app. And again, if you're one of those lucky folks who have people coming into your office, you're going to be able to have that information when you meet with that student. You're going to see how focused they are in your class. When you think about how many polling questions to include in your lesson plan, 3 to 5 iClicker polling questions per 50-minute class is a great rule of thumb. That's a question every 10 to 15 minutes. When we see instructors ask fewer questions than this, students have a hard time seeing iClicker as a really valuable part of their class. And if you've been in our session today, I've asked a lot of iClicker questions, and you've probably felt a little bit anxious, like, hey, ask me more questions. I asked you 4 different questions, and it's been about a half an hour. So you can kind of feel like, did that feel like too many, too few? 3 to 5 tends to be the sweet spot for a 50-minute class section. The benefits of it is you're going to get in-class participation from every single student every time. And this, again, if you're moving to virtual or you're going back and forth between a physical classroom and a virtual classroom, this can be that continual thread that keeps your students engaged in your class. You're also able to use anonymous polling questions to explore sensitive topics. In our February newsletter, we're going to talk more about anonymous polling, and we're going to have some anonymous polling question ideas. But, we're in a time where students may be wanting to talk about how current events are impacting their studies, but they want privacy to be able to do that. Anonymous polling really helps with that. We also have iClicker assignments for small group activities, self-reflection, and more. We're seeing a lot of instructors use it as an alternative to quizzing. Um, this is something too that you can use with a pre-recorded video. With iClicker assignments, you're able to give students basically a batch of polling questions at the same time that they can move through at their own pace. And a lot of instructors pair an iClicker assignment with a video that they've recorded, and then throughout the video prompt students to respond to questions. And it's a great way to make classes interactive, and to bring in that iClicker feeling to a canned lecture. And then lastly, I want you to encourage you to end class sessions with iClicker exit polls for even more feedback. So here I can just go ahead. I'm done with my polling questions. Am I done with my polling questions? I got to check my lesson plan really quickly. I am done with my polling questions. So I'm going to go ahead and click X here, and then it prompts me to end class with an exit poll. When I end class with an exit poll, it sends an alert to my students that says, hey, how well did you understand today's class? And they rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. And then there's a field where they're encouraged to contact their instructor with any further questions. So that's something that you'll want to try with your students. And if it's something that you consistently do across your entire term, you could also turn that exit poll data into some actionable feedback for you. And you can track how clear and unclear your classroom lectures were. So it's a really cool tool. All right, so we are to our question and answer session.
Yes,
Let's
that's right.
see, what do we got?
And thanks for that great review of all of our new features, Natalie. We have had a couple of questions come in already, but once again, as a reminder, if you do have a question, it's not too late. Go ahead and enter it into the questions panel on your screen. As Natalie mentioned, being able to answer your questions in this Q&A session really is one of the things that we enjoy most about doing these webinars for you. So first question, has iClicker Student replaced the Reef app?
Yes, it has. We had retired the branding last year, and now it is just iClicker Student. If you are looking in the iTunes store or the Play Store, and you look for iClicker, there are going to be two apps. There's one for instructors, and that's the one that I use today to really just give myself another screen to manage iClicker, and I'm so comfortable. And then you're going to see iClicker Student.
Yep, exactly. And students can always go to iClicker.com and sign in as a student there too.
Yeah.
All right, so we need, just to confirm, we need iClicker Cloud desktop software installed specifically on the classroom computer that I would be using to run iClicker, correct?
Yes, that is the only place you're going to need that desktop software. And let's say you come to class that day, you plan to use the podium computer, and you walk up to it, and iClicker isn't on it, and you don't have permissions to install anything. No worries. Just go to iClicker.com, click Downloads, click Cloud. We have a standalone version of iClicker. When you click iClicker for Windows, we ask you, hey, do you have permission to install on this computer? Are you an administrator? Just say no, and you'll be given a version of the software that can be installed with no permissions. And it really takes a minute. I've used it in many different situations, and it's no different than the permanently installed software. It just might disappear from the computer based on the settings that the administrators have put on that computer. I hope that makes sense to everybody. It sounds so
I'll
much
see if
more
there's any.
complicated than it really is.
Yeah, yeah. And anytime that you open up the software, however many times you install it or wherever you install it, all of your class data will be there just
Yep.
based on your login credentials. But yeah, I'll wait to see if there's a follow-up question on that. But next question, how do you set the exit poll question?
So the exit poll question right now is not customizable. That is something that is on the roadmap for development, I believe.
Mhm.
We just haven't developed it yet. So it's good to know that people want it, because that can add some urgency to things like that. But for now, it's not customizable.
But I will just add that I have heard of some instructors using our iClicker assignments activity type to actually ask exit polls or exit tickets, those kinds of questions after class. Because then you can totally customize it. And we actually have some sample prompts that you can use on our support community. I'll look for the link for that and share that in the chat.
Nice.
All right, I've already created my class in iClicker Classic. Will switching from iClicker Classic to this newest version, iClicker Cloud, screw things up?
Yes. It really depends. If you have already introduced iClicker Classic to your students and you're using Classic with your students, stay with Classic. That's
Yeah.
what you're using this term. It wouldn't be a tragedy. You would just be to switch. It would be like if you were to switch from having all of your students use Canvas to having them use Blackboard. Canvas and Blackboard are fine. They're just different, and it's just better to stick with one moving forward. Does that make sense? Would you agree, Lindsay?
Yeah, yeah. If you've already got students in your class in iClicker Classic, it's best to just kind of stick with that. But I will say you could, in Classic, enable the student app still if you want students to have that option to participate with their mobile devices. And if you haven't yet, if you've set up your course in Classic, but you haven't yet done anything with it, then it's much easier to go ahead and make the switch to iClicker Cloud. And you're welcome to sign up for training with us to help make that transition. All right, great questions here. So
Yeah.
next question, where will you see the results for the exit poll?
The results for the exit poll are in the gradebook. You just go to the day that you're curious about. You click on the link to the day that's at the top. It's, they'll say, like today, I'm going to go and look at the poll. So I'll just click on January 20th. And then there's an option to download the exit poll data right there. It downloads as an Excel spreadsheet,
Mhm.
which is really nice because then you can merge all of your exit data if you want to at the end of the term, for graphing and stuff like that.
Yep, exactly. And we did get a tip in the chat about telling students to just use that exit poll question as it is written, but the instructor tells them what question to answer, sort of customizing it that way.
That's a real easy way to do it.
Yeah,
Very true.
that works too.
Yeah.
And just to confirm, there's not a way to be automatically notified of an exit poll response, so you know when to
Not
check.
right now. You have to go and check. And that's a really good point. If you're using it with your students, let them know. It's not like an email. You don't get an alert. You can say, I'm going to check the exit polls tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And just let them know because if they have something urgent and they throw it in there, they might feel like they're being ignored. Um, so it is something you have to manually check. I usually just check it the next day because some people take a while to respond. So
Yeah, and I will add, so you don't have to, if you want to just quickly view whether any new responses have come in, you can see that from the class history page, that sort of first page of your instructor website. Um, And then you can go into the gradebook and actually download the report from there if you know that new ones have come in. It's just an easier way to see them, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. It looks like the Canvas iClicker app does not need a new consumer key and shared secret strings for each new semester. Is that correct? And I can, yes, I
I
can go ahead and answer that one.
Lindsay?
Yeah, so the good news is that it does not need any of that information. So if you're using the iClicker app with Canvas or with Blackboard or Brightspace Desire to Learn D2L, um, it is all totally done as long as it's set up by the campus administrator for the whole institution, then instructors on their own can go into the iClicker Cloud Instructor course settings and set up the integration, the grade sync totally on their own without that key and secret and without having to reach out to their campus LMS administrator.
Good
um,
stuff.
we had a question, I don't actually use the iClicker website. Am I missing out on lots of goodies?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a really easy way to get a nice overview of what's going on in your classroom.
Mhm.
I think it's pretty intuitive
Yeah,
to find your way around, and it's easy on the eyes. So I
yeah,
like it.
yeah. All right, we have a question about Achieve. Is it possible to explain quickly how to set up iClicker inside of Achieve?
Yes, it's super easy. You go to the grade book, and then in the corner, in the upper right corner, you're going to see a button that says Sync iClicker. Click that button, it'll walk you through all the prompts, and you'll be done. It's very fast, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Let me search for the article that goes through all the steps. I'll put that in the chat. Hopefully,
Yeah,
you guys can access the chat
yeah. And Achieve
article.
includes iClicker as long as you're not using one of our essential courses. And so you want to make sure that you set it up through Achieve because then your students won't be prompted for payment in that course. So that's another reason you want to make sure that you set up your iClicker course in Achieve because it's part of the toolbox that is Achieve.
Exactly. So yep, so just set it up in your Achieve gradebook, use the iClicker button, follow the prompts, and also just make sure you maybe want to set up a gradebook category using your gradebook settings.
Yep.
Um, okay, just a couple more questions. Can I view confidence ratings after class?
Yes, they are right there underneath your polling questions on the website.
Yep. And the website will also tell you which questions had the highest and lowest confidence if you're asking multiple questions with confidence ratings.
It's a fun tool. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I already created a practice course for myself. Can I go back and set it up to be invitation only, or do I have to create a new one?
All you need to do is go into the settings and see there'll be two options there, and one will say unlisted. Just go ahead and select that, and it'll change it to unlisted.
Perfect. And it looks like this is the last question, at least for now. If I am using iClicker, do I already have an account on the website?
So if you have already used iClicker Cloud and you've used the desktop software and you've logged in with a username and password, you should be able to log in at iClicker.com, no problem. If you go and you enter your instructor details and for some reason you don't have an account, it'll let you know.
Mhm.
Um, so it's really easy to test.
Yep, and for anyone out there who maybe used iClicker Classic, our more original software in the past, it's possible you don't yet have an account on the website because that was all of your information was stored locally, like on your computer or your flash drive in the past. But definitely recommend using iClicker Cloud. It does have a lot of cool features that we continue building out. All right, I don't see any other questions come in, so I did just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this Back to Campus webinar. This is our second one that we've done, and we hope to do one of these at the start of every new term, just to review what's new.
Yeah. And I hope we see you all in the coming months for more webinars about more topics, and definitely going to steal some of those ideas you sent us all.
Yeah. So once again, if you think of any questions later, feel free to respond directly to our follow-up email and we'll get you the answers you need. And once again, we'll be sending that recording and slide deck in that follow-up email. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope you enjoy using iClicker.
Thanks, everybody.